Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's your girl Jennifer and you're watching Against All Odds. So today my people, sit down, sit still. This conversation today is juicy. Very, very juicy. And it's juicy because I am going to be talking about relationships. But above all, I'm going to be vulnerable. I want to talk about some of my dating dramas. People love to talk about relationships. Hey, I think in the past two videos you've seen this composed, lovely girl who you think has not had dramas in life. Oh. And because I've also told you from the past two videos how I'm a religious girl, I love prayer, I was brought up in a Christian home. Yes. That notwithstanding, dramas I had in my dating life, you need to sit still. So, yes, I just want to be vulnerable, because recently I've been hearing stories about how people have been divorcing, separating, some relationships going so bad and so wild. And because it's been something I've been thinking about, talks with my, had a talk with my friends sometimes. Yeah, so I'm thinking, why not? Let's do this. And what a better day to do this other than today. So it's going to be one of a series of many series. Series, is there a word like that? Yeah, it's good because we can't talk about relationships I've had for how many years of my life in one day. No, it's going to be several, so I'll be bringing them slowly by slowly. But today, let's just go and let me give you a background. And as I'm giving you this background, I want to talk from the place of, like now, as I've said, I've been talking to some of my friends, then like even in the news, everywhere, relationships are going bad and haywire and a lot of things. And so from my African context and background, I have been like coming up with a solution that I think people of my generation and maybe going backwards, this could be the problem that is ailing most of us. And problem number one is us growing up in Africa, and to be very particular myself, which parent ever sat you down and told you, this is how dating is done, this is how you go meet a man, introduce him, this is how marriage is going to be, and everything. I come from a family background where marriage works and has been modeled the right way by most of my relatives and even my own parents. But that's notwithstanding, remember, people can model the right thing because most of us, the right thing has always been modeled. But the question is, do we know the nitty-gritties? I know my parents have a very wonderful and beautiful marriage, but did I ever know the nitty-gritties of marriage and of a good relationship? What encompasses it? What makes it all glue and we see the glam that we see in most of these relationships? People are talking about, some celebrities were talking about couple goals, marriage goals. People, don't be fooled by people who want to portray a certain image. The reality of it, even those that are not trying to portray anything and have successful marriages, there's a story in between there that we don't get the details. And it is these details, when we ourselves get into relationships and we'll get to start learning the hard way, that's where people separate, divorce, you realize somebody is toxic, all these many things. So, now, I want to give you a brief background of myself. For me, I was on the pulpit before I was in the pew. What do I mean by that? My parents have always been Christians. So by the time my parents were married, they were Christians and serving in the ministry and in church in different capacities. My dad, as I said before and earlier, if you followed me and listened to me, my dad was a veterinarian and my mom was a teacher. So they met, got married. So you can imagine, by the time my mom was pregnant with our firstborn brother and myself and my younger brother, we were on the pulpit. For me, I have not known to be in the pew. I've always known to be there, So that's where we found ourselves. So we found ourselves in a place where we have to have some certain spiritual values. Our parents were well educated, so they were some well-recognized and well-to-do people in the society. So they had a societal image, they had a religious image, and a professional image that they conducted or carried themselves around. And this is the environment we come to find ourselves in. So, now, if you find yourself as a child like me in such an environment, sometimes you may never truly know what is in the world out there, because you by default come to a certain setting. And this is not just for me as a person growing up in a Christian home. I want you now to think about even somebody who grew up, the parents were maybe military. So you grew up in a military setting, unlike a civilian setting. So translate these different settings to the different places people grew up in, because it models how your life starts. Yeah, so that's how my life started. You grow up, you're being principled, guided, and have these values. So in those days, there were two things. When you do something wrong, you go to hell. You do something right and you live a good life, you go to heaven. Now, in my young childhood life, I believe I lived in heaven all the time, because I was always doing the right thing. Small mistakes don't make you go to hell, Those ones are correctable, so you still remain on the heavenly path. Because I didn't grow up knowing there is really right and wrong. Because I remember even us, how we used to tease each other as children. We used to say, if you do something, in Kiswahili you say, utaenda kwa shetani. Na, wewe si wa Mungu. Like, okay, to translate, you're of the devil. And if you do something right, you are of God. You will go to heaven. So that is how even we teased each other as children, as a society then. So that in their early childhood lives, you don't have issues. I didn't have to have a boyfriend. This thing I hear, like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, you have a boyfriend. Boyfriend what? Girlfriend what? No. In our African setting, you had to, mask those feelings. When adolescence tries to creep up. So, but I will never tell you how my adolescent life was, yes, because I had those feelings. But you had to, no. So for me, in my childhood life, I lived in heaven. When I start entering my teenage life and my young adult life, I crisscrossed between heaven and hell. Heaven and hell. I crisscrossed there almost simultaneously. But I think my parents don't know this, and maybe the wider society because they appeared right, didn't know. But I think I lived in hell more than I lived in heaven. Yes. So I got to high school. Now, in Africa, there are things we do not name, and there are things we don't call them as they are. It feels like it's offensive. So, things like sex. We never had sex conversations with our parents. Please put in the comments down below if you had those conversations with your parents. And if you did, I applaud you. So I don't remember ever having sex conversations with my parents, because all I knew about sex is, and it's not even sex. For me, I knew if you sit close to a boy or hang around with boys, that equals pregnancy. So I avoided boys like a plague, And I was not the only one. People of my time, that's how we did. Even in school, we avoided boys like a plague, because standing with a boy, talking for like 30 minutes, an hour, equals pregnancy. You get? So, I enter my adolescent life, and definitely in your adolescent life, it's like your body is not yours. Because the way it is behaving, it has never behaved that way before. And you're thinking like, what is wrong with this body? You see a boy and you feel some certain electricity, and you curse it with the curse of hell, because you have to live in heaven, Why is this body trying to make you feel like, and then because those feelings are for people who live in hell and people who are going to hell. So you do everything for those feelings to suppress them. And when you're going through all this, you can't talk to anybody, So I want to introduce you to science. In school, we studied science. Science in primary school, our days we called it science and agriculture. In high school, we called it biology. So we were introduced to the hormonal changes, what happens to boys when they are in their teenage, their changes, all this, girls, all this. So for me, that was just science and agriculture. Whatever was taught in class and reality were two disconnected things. Very disconnected. I know clearly they would say the boys will have a hoarse voice, and then they'll develop the Adam's apple, which by that time I never clearly saw the Adam's apple, because when they call it an Adam's apple, you're expecting a proper apple to see it, So I never saw it. So definitely whatever they were teaching in class and whatever the reality I'm supposed to see is not happening. So since I never saw a boy with any apple on their neck, then that was just science, So it remained in class. And I only passed because in Africa, we were taught how to cram. Oh, we crammed our lives. So that's why reality and theory never agreed. So you see. So I got to high school and I'm taught biology. Whoa. How you menstruate, how there's a fallopian tube, how there's a cervix, how there's a penis, how there's this. I can tell you without lying and without even shame. However much I read about that was somebody else's body. It was something a teacher was mentioning. That did not relate to me, because how? Those parts I had never seen. Like now, when they talk about a male part, I had never seen it. So clearly it doesn't make sense, because you see sometimes when you have seen something, you can associate it with what you're being taught, right? So, now, even your own part that you're being taught as a woman, how do you even know how it looks? Because like, whatever they are saying, the fallopian, how can I see it physically? How can I see it? You get? And the shape of the of the figure on the blackboard and on the textbook is very different from the practical shape of my human self, right? So clearly those things cannot merge. You get? So clearly and honestly, at this point, I will go for my biology teacher and that school I was in. They need to refund my father my school fees, because they did a really bad job. Because how could I leave high school without not relating classwork and practicality? How? So, yes. It can sound daft to you. It can sound like I'm just saying it because it's YouTube and no. I'm not looking for like following. I'm just looking to be real, because we don't get people telling us things that are real, and that's why the world is getting messed up. So yeah, that's why I said today I want to be vulnerable. Yeah. So for me, whatever was being taught in class, and I passed biology, I had an A. But it was biology that I passed because one, I crammed, and number two, I understood what they were teaching in class. Because after all, it's not me. They are not talking about me, because those things they're talking about, I don't know. I don't see them. So, I don't know whether that was their undoing. I believe probably there are people who, those things that were being taught in class, they had experienced them or they had tested them. They could have been there. Because like the girls who got pregnant in school, how did they get pregnant? But again, honestly, I believe it's not ignorant for some people to have gotten pregnant without understanding that that thing that was being taught in class is exactly what we were being told, because it's like you have an out-of-body experience from a theoretical perspective of what is being taught there. You get, because you weren't taught like you would spark, you'd feel so excited and everything, you know. Yes, so that is the kind of a person I was. Now, to make all this worse is because I was a church girl. And as a church girl, you couldn't test things. How can you test sex when you're a church girl? It means you have an automatic ticket and passport to hell. So you can't be testing those things. You can't just be hanging around boys, because I told you, sitting too long with a boy equals pregnancy. So clearly I didn't sit long with boys, you see. And boys were merely more like my brothers, because I have two brothers. So there was that perspective like of boys almost being my brothers. So this girl who crisscrosses hell and heaven but dwells more in hell is here and may not understand how life is and where I find myself when now reality starts hitting me, when I am out of high school and I get into the real world, where theory, practical life of the society, what they say and what you've been taught, versus the reality of life, what it teaches you. So this is where I come into the world. And when I come to the world and people start giving birth after high school and stuff like that, and then now I enter to this world where, sorry, this is not my belief, but I want to say it as it was said. Men are dogs. All men cheat. All men are this. Women are very evil. Women are very wicked. All those negative ABCDs of men and women in relationships. And at some point, I bought those. I bought it. I bought those sentiments, you see. But I can tell you, all that is a lie. They are good men. They are good women. I was the one of them, so I thought. So let me tell you how my dating life started. I started dating knowing that any man who gets me has struck gold. Has struck gold. And they better make me a wife quicker. You know, hey, I knew I was the saint, I was the best, I was everything. Because clearly, I have lived in heaven all my life. How can I be bad, you know? So let me categorize the men I dated. I dated mama's boys, narcissists. I dated, this one I have to put it in quotes, brethren. I dated lowlifes, but I also dated gold diggers. So, how did I find all these men? Remember my perception of dating and how theory and biology and practical things do not agree. So I come into a world where I think everything is ideal because of my limited understanding of people, because I could only see things from the worldview I grew up in. Whereas others are seeing life and dating from their other worldview. So think about a girl who has grown up knowing, oh, we love each other, we get married. And another person who thinks like, hey, we have to test the road. We have to indulge in sex here and there. We have to do a few things here. See if we match and agree and stuff like that. People, that mentality and mindset landed me in lots of trouble. But my question is today, did I blame the guys who were narcissists, who are abusive, who are gold diggers? Do I blame them? No way. Why? Because they were true to themselves. I was not true to myself. I clearly did not know what I was bringing into a relationship. I clearly did not know what I was bargaining for. I thought I had a perception of what dating and relationship should be. And that is what I brought to the table. And on this episode, I will not go to specific stories, but I will be doing that in the future. I was just coming first to give you a background and to highlight where people's minds in dating, where sometimes people get it twisted. So I can show you the first few dating years of my life, how horrible and pathetic, like I got myself into very messy situations because of my worldview, because of my exposure, because of my ignorance, because of my curiosity, because clearly when you come and you do not know that organ that was taught in biology, you don't know how it looks like. And now you've heard your friends talk about things. Doesn't that arouse your curious mind? And then you start playing detective and you want to find out that thing that was talked about, does it exist? Hey, look at all this beauty and glam going to be wasted away. Well, the guys I dated, So that is a sneak preview of how people can get it twisted in relationships. I am not the only one. Many people do get it twisted. And unfortunately, it is in those twists, because in those twists, when somebody gets twisted, and you're 2021 coming into the dating world, and then you have it twisted, soon and very soon you have a child. Soon and very soon you force the man or family forces you to get married to that man. What foundation do you have to have a happily ever after life? And those are the reasons why some of the people are struggling with mental health issues, depression. People are bitter. People are very angry. People are very toxic. I will also tell you how I dated toxic people. But I also want to tell you, at some point, how toxic I was as well. I know some people can blame others and talk about how people are toxic and everything. But sometimes we never reflect and think, was I toxic? Sometimes, before we point a finger on others, sometimes we need to look closely at who we are. Remember, people, to change the world, you need to change your mind. So, I will catch you on the next episode, because I know you're itching. You're itching to hear some of my relationship dramas. I'll give them to you, don't worry. Pause it. I have some juice for you and I'll serve it. Bye.